I want you to picture yourself. No, not the self that others think of you, or what you desire to be. Think of the real you, who you are, which is actually probably what others think of you, and probably what you desire to be. What you are consists of everything around you. Everything you touch, see, talk to, hear, smell, and think of, that is a part of you. You've probably spent the last year and a half disconnected from society, alone, separated from everyday normality. Some of you might rejoice in this fact. You get to be inside your own little world, living in a fantasy. The thought of interacting with others has left your mind. You are completely alone. This is how I felt during a not so great time in my life. Everything was dark. The only light inside me was filled by others, and that wasn't so bad, but I had never control over my own happiness. I had no individuality. I suddenly remembered a show I watched when I was really young. I found this show by watching clips from a movie called Pacific Rim. However, unlike this movie, it was animated. Giant robots were fighting these things called angels with flashy lights and bombastic music, and that's all this show was to me. The name kept leaving my head, but eventually it stayed. However, many years later, during the darkest point in my life, I decided to rewatch this show, vaguely remembering its name. I thought to myself, Evangelion was that show with cool robots. I could just turn my brain off and not have to worry about anything. And so I decided to rewatch it. And in my lonesome, in the darkest point of my life, that was when I fully came to understand what I watched. It became the genesis of who I am today. This is my Neon Genesis Evangelion, and finding meaning to who I am and to who you could be. Thank you. Something becomes very off when you start this show. It doesn't feel like a normal Gundam mech. The morning cicadas fill the empty void of morning. The city is empty with a single boy standing in his lonesome. Shinji Ikari is what escapism is. His ability to close himself off from everyone, falling into a state of depression. Putting on headphones to block out the sounds of true reality. Shinji escapes into his own nothingness. But in this nothingness, he cannot live. And so we are introduced to the Evangelion units. From a surface level, these are the protectors of humanity, the robots that will keep the entire world and this story safe, but they are also something else entirely. They represent our sense of escape, shown when this robot protects Shinji from falling debris, offering him salvation from this reality. Shinji accepts this notion of escape, but he is also hesitant. While this Eva gives him purpose, he is also piloting the Eva for recognition. Shinji had left his father because his father had also left him. This made Shinji angry. It made Shinji hate his father for not paying attention to him, blaming him for his mother's death. And so Evangelion traps you with Shinji, a world where everyone is trying to escape their own traumas. This show has become much deeper and different than what we have ever expected. We start Shinji's journey with the first 4 episodes, and they are nothing short of a paradise. Shinji is perceived as alone. Different scenes capture someone who is empty, enveloped in despair. Every time Shinji fights and gets hurt, he ends up in the hospital, a ceiling he doesn't recognize. And these scenes are tinted in white. In the West, we perceive this color as pure art. White represents love and protection, like angels coming down from heaven, while white in the East means cold and sterile. Shinji is not pure. Shinji represents absolutely nothing. He represents someone who doesn't know happiness. Misato begins this series trying to comfort Shinji, reaching out her hand to pull Shinji out of the great abyss he resides in. However, Misato herself cannot escape her own confusing life. She is messy and emotionally unsure like Shinji, but the bonds these two share at the start of the series starts to gradually grow. But eventually, with these bonds growing and Shinji trying to come out of his shell, he keeps getting reminded of the horrors of reality and tries to find his comfort and escape, somewhere where he doesn't have to feel anything. As we close off episode 2, the Eye of Escape opens. This is what it means to leave. This is absolute madness. Shinji comes back to reality of the show, doing what others tell him to do, not what he wants to do. Shinji acts like a robot. He thinks if he can act like this, everything will be fine. If I cannot think for myself, everything will just work out. Shinji closes himself off from others to not feel their pain, but in doing so, his world becomes silent. Silence is true loneliness. And so when he is confronted by a decision, he rejects them and lashes out because there is also something Shinji might want, and that's attention. But Misato doesn't give it to him. It's selfish to take other people's feelings, and during this scene, Misato is tinted in black. She is shown in black while explaining this to Shinji because this is how Shinji depicts her. Another figure he doesn't want to open up to. Someone who doesn't have a will. Before this entire encounter, Shinji had ran away. He left his father, he left Misato, he left all of his classmates. And while he was running away, all he found was loneliness. But in that escapism, he also found a sound that wouldn't go away. And that is insanity. As Shinji gazed over the edge of a cliff, nothing mattered to him. He smiled in true nihilism. This is how the show starts off, but then something changes. Evangelion changes to something so frightening and scary, it's almost unreal. It fakes living.
If you want real happiness, you've got to find it for yourself, not wait for someone to give it to you. Oh, why did I go? Exactly why did you go? You must remember, you must confront your flaws, and you must confront yourself. I know that, but I just can't. Even though you will to survive and chose to die for a false hope, your survival is not a mistake, Shinji.
Misato, how can you be so cruel?
For 13 episodes, Shinji, Asuka, Misato, Rei, and so many others fill the life in this show exponentially. Shinji is gradually climbing out of his shell. However, with this extreme change of pace, the small cracks of everyone's psyche still break in this illusion of peace. Gendo's connection to Rei angers Shinji. His caring for Rei, who is a false replica of his wife Yui, separates from his son even more. Rei lacks emotion. She's an inanimate object, someone who seems to have no individual will or soul. However, this is someone who isn't like Shinji, but a person who has not experienced anything. Someone who is under Gendo's control of never being free. Rei can never experience true freedom. Shinji begins to breathe reality. Being in school introduces him to Toji and Kinsuke, which brings Shinji from his depressed state into wanting to meet people again, taking off his headphones to see and talk with them. While this is happening, we learn that Rei admires Gendo for saving her. However, this is only because Gendo lacks the courage to let go of Yui, not Rei. Rei is nothing to Gendo and just an empty shell to be looked at as Yui, both a false daughter and a false wife. Gendo can never let her go. But in Rei's admiration for Gendo and Gendo's false happiness towards Rei, Shinji grows jealous. His father had barely given him any attention, yet he seemed so confident and happy talking to Rei. Shinji continues to not understand. With the arrival of Asuka, the show continues its lightheartedness. Asuka appears to be energetic, sassy, judgmental, and full of herself. Asuka embodies overconfidence and cockiness. She wants to be better than everyone else so that everyone will notice her and praise her on how good she is. Asuka pushes the notion that everything will be done her way. Her reasoning behind piloting her Eva is the honor she brings, but the real reason is for attention and recognition. The trauma deep inside her is beginning to be revealed. But the show still doesn't decide to reveal this. The show refuses to go back to how it was in the first 4 episodes. This is how you escape. The show has now left reality and has escaped into an imaginary one where things are planned out by an outside force. The show is now being directed in a more planned and predictable state. As the show continues in this fashion, it makes us distracted from the little hints left in some episodes. At the end of episode 9, Shinji thinks it's a good idea to kiss Asuka, which it's not. His awkwardness reawakens once he realizes Asuka is dreaming of her own mother, who never gave her attention, just like Shinji's father. Shinji goes back into loneliness and frustration, knowing that Asuka is just like him. Misato battles her own confusion. She is stuck in the past with Kaji, but during her time at NERV, she tries to be the mature woman she envisions herself to be. Gendo relies on his philosophy of nihilism and thinks only of logic without emotion. These are the small cracks that we soon come to realize have much more meaning to them. All the characters seem to be living a patterned life, one with goals, sorrow, pain, and everything that can balance each other out. It seems like a healthy life. Or is it? This is now the reality of the situation. There is no rinse and repeat anymore. Your escapism is now over. Welcome to reality. Toji represents a crucial part in the story. He's the turning point, the make or break for Shinji. Toji being inside the rogue Eva turned into the 13th angel represents a wake-up call to Shinji, a call back to reality. A reality Shinji must face. The show, now having you hooked on a surface level eye candy mech, now grabs you. You were the prey all along. It's as if we were playing with a tiger, something that we know is bad and thus we stay away from it. But as we get closer to it, we see life in it. We look into its eyes and see the beauty of its soul, and so we stay to see what this creature has in store for us. Until the tiger gets hungry and we find out that our neck has been ripped apart and we now have to face the reality of our situation. This is Evangelion. Shinji had to kill Toji, realizing that the one thing he had to do, the one thing that he did not want to do, was to hurt people. He did not want to hurt anyone, nor did he want to hurt himself. And so Shinji screams in rage and agony, his father controlling his mech, his father, Gendo Ikari, having control over him. The countdown begins for every character, as it started on the first day. The thing about confession is that it's very hard. It's hard to convey those pent-up feelings, which leads to the reoccurring train scene. The train can represent your soul. While in your soul, we can truly see what you're thinking. Shinji finds justification for living by piloting the Eva for his father, for attention and acknowledgement, but in doing so, he runs away from the truth by hiding inside a fantasy. The introduction of Kaoru introduces another form of love, a form that represents closeness and someone that actively enjoys Shinji for who he is. But for a character with little appearance, the only trait he shows is stealing the happiness from Shinji. He never helped Shinji cope once with himself. Shinji to Kaoru was a vessel that should never be changed. And so when Shinji refuses a change in Kaoru, he lashes out. The only person he could trust was now dead. Is death true freedom? It is an idea. And now we are at the end. So, what does everyone have to say? We tend to find ourselves lacking when we don't have certain things. And Asuka Langley Shoyu, it's life, it's attention. Her mother went insane and in doing so saw her daughter as a doll. Asuka never had a mother. Asuka wanted to be the best because if not, she couldn't have the satisfaction to prove to others that she is the best. She wants to prove to herself, and show to the people that never gave a thought about her that she is worth attention. That is the Asuka that is worth living. She seeks her own value in the perception of others. She has separation anxiety. She is afraid of people leaving her, and she saw her mother hanging from a ceiling. Asuka loses her ambition. This is her end. Misato had to be a good child. She can't depend on anyone else so her father wouldn't hate her. Misato hated all of it. She was tired of everything. She wanted to be ruined. And so she found her father's embrace in Kaiji. She filled the hole in her heart with temporary ecstasy. Misato didn't want to face reality. This is her end. A false body, a fake soul, an empty shell, a person playing human. Who has she become through interactions with other people? Who is Rei Ayanami? Rei is ceasing to be unknown, to cease to exist, afraid to be forgotten. Now Rei has a will. She is afraid of death. This is her end. Alone, on a spotlight, torment envelops Shinji as everything flashes around him. Shinji is afraid of uncertainty, and it all leads back to his father abandoning him. This is his hate for everything. And then Shinji comes to the realization that he's doing it for himself, for his own personal gain. Shinji wants everyone to fall for him, to give him the satisfaction to live. He doesn't want to give himself a reason to live, but leave it in the hand of you. And thus, he develops a crisis identity. Shinji thinks he's the only one in pain, demanding others to care for him, afraid of rejection. But without others, you can't find yourself. Characters begin to reappear, telling Shinji that the escapism he seeks will only bring more pain. Shinji, love yourself. Breaking the shambles of depression, Shinji rises to reality worth living. The world has problems, but if you don't hate yourself, you can find your own paradise. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Mother. And thank you to everyone else. Congratulations. Being unsure can make everything impossible. During the hospital scene, Shinji can neither understand love nor can he understand happiness. And like Misato, he fills that void with a short burst of ecstasy. Now nothing matters to him. Asuka becomes afraid of death, rejecting her own depression, and goes insane. Instead of reality, she escapes to a world with her mother, till her mind collapses. Trapped in an endless loop of insanity and losing rage, Shinji lashes out once again, throwing a childish fit, but in that rage, Asuka looks over him, not giving him the attention he wants. And so, Shinji chokes Asuka as his world comes tumbling down. This is the reality of the end of Evangelion. Out of hate, Shinji kills his father. Out of hate, Shinji leaves his world. Out of hate, Shinji rejects everyone. This is it. This is the end of Shinji. The end of you. All of you. This is real life, not the anime you're watching right now, not the video you're watching from your phone, your PC, your laptop, and TVs. Leave this reality. Don't come back to this imaginary fantasy of yours. These characters are not real, and you are leaving your reality for this substitute. And so Shinji comes back to reality. It's okay to be unique, to not fit perfectly with everyone. Your own individual self is a part of mankind. It's your own uniqueness that expands humanity and creates the passage of time and growth. Shinji rejects becoming everything. We humans are many things. One most prominent thing is that we are disgusting. Shinji is disgusting.
気持ち悪い。
The rebuild movies in Evangelion are a sort of redemption for both us fans and the director Hideaki Anno. Evangelion has gone from an average production to an epic story that takes your immersion to the next level. Escapism has never been more prominent than in this series, and you and I are not alone.
Ayanami. Give her.
Forget about everyone else. What about you? Who cares what others think? You need to decide for yourself if you want to pilot the Eva or not. And if you don't, you are free to pick. The choice is yours.
I'll never love again. Not ever, with anyone. In life, it's important to embrace change and try new things.
All you do is think about yourself. You think shutting up is the answer.
Now we start over. Shinji is still enveloped by his own depression. Rei still has no individuality. We are back to square one. You Are Not Alone gives the stage that we've seen before, but replaces the old scenes we once knew and brings an unmatched quality like ever before, with a soundtrack that reels you in from start to finish. This is what true escape means, which is what the first movie might have wanted to convey. Everything is a copy of what we know, until the introduction of someone new. someone who has never been a thought or has ever existed in this story. Mari represents the antithesis of Evangelion. Her character opposes everything about the show. She is not like Shinji, Asuka, Misato, Gendo, or Rei. Mari is the only one who has everything figured out. Mari has become the salvation of Evangelion. Asuka seems more confident and assertive, and Shinji tries to reconnect with his father. Rei, Asuka, and Shinji all work together like a team without being at each other's throats. Gendo is shown with even more emotion, trying to find his wife within Rei. Shinji realizes why he pilots the Eva faster than the previous version. Everyone seems a lot more happy than their originals. All characters express their emotions so fluently. Rei stopping Asuka's slap, Asuka being happy and caring for other people. This could be us finally figuring things out. This could be the ending we've been looking for. However, this doesn't end. Instead of Toji this time in the Berserker Eva, it's Asuka, someone even more close to Shinji. Gendo now reverts back to his original state, lacking emotion, and history repeats itself. Shinji runs away again, but this time Gendo, his father, confronts Shinji. Working hard and sacrificing is how you achieve your goals, but Shinji still doesn't understand. Shinji is now fretting over everything, and that makes life less fun. It makes it less fun because that's not how you live. That's not what makes life fun. She represents someone with no deep pain but will live life with a purpose and choose how she goes out in fantastic fashion. Mari understands her situation, accepts it, and moves on. She is the embodiment of pure self. And so as Shinji sees Rei risking her life, giving up on her own life, it angers Shinji. It angers him to the point of regret and longing, forcing him back to his feet and running back to his Eva. The mechanism that was used for his escape and purpose is now being used as a tool to give him meaning. Shinji, now assertive, realizing the cruel world, thus fighting against it, thus becoming a part of it, thus living. In his effort to save Rei, he did not care about the world or others, but he was not trying to escape. He was trying to grab something that was leaving his reality, someone who he was willing to sacrifice his own self for. He no longer wanted other people's attention, but instead giving all of his will to another person, to Rei. This is the first time Shinji has ambition, the first time he has done something for no one else but him. But in that careless struggle, something happened. We were all trapped in this world of Eva, always trapped in a particular setting, this time frame, this location. This world of Eva was our escape for years, and now from here on out, your escaped world no longer exists. The next movie does something different, something completely unexpected. You, the viewer, have now been spit in the face. This show you've fallen in love with has now rejected you, and this connection you felt to the story and its characters has started to fade. This is no longer the Evangelion you once knew. We begin with everyone detached from Shinji. He has woken up 14 years later and is completely disconnected from reality. A sense of loneliness fills Shinji's mind once again. However, Asuka has not even aged, nor has Shinji, representing their own lack of change and not being able to fully realize themselves. And this is what the movie wants to show. It wants to show that even with a change in setting, this doesn't change you. This doesn't change you because you haven't confronted yourself. This change is supposed to make you realize that this entire altercation of the story will never change the trauma inside you. People now do not want Shinji to pilot the Eva. Misato is now trying to destroy Nerve. Everyone is opposing what the show stands for. This is the wake-up call. Gendo is now closed off, isolated from everyone. Rei is back to being inanimate, a doll with no will, and Shinji is more confused than ever. It seemed like in the last movie we were so close to an answer, a revelation that would finally give us our end. Kaoru is introduced once again, opening his reappearance with a beautiful piano scene, expressing his own beauty for the world and how it's fun to be together. Once again, Shinji finds something that makes him have purpose, finding value in something, but that's the only thing he can do. Even though Shinji has found something he enjoys, the abyss of nothingness is where he still finds himself. Through this, Shinji still can't accept himself. Kaoru has now become his safety blanket. He envelops Shinji into his comfort, Shinji is again not doing anything. His madness begins once again as confusion reaches his peak, but it's not as intense as the previous version. Instead, it's more sad and childish. Shinji feels tired. He feels tired of losing everyone, losing time and time again because of his own decisions and other people's reactions toward him. So this makes Shinji go through a childish phase, now rejecting what people say and pulling the two spears out of Lilith. Now this Shinji has turned into a brat. But the one person that comes for Shinji after everything is Mari. Mari explains to a broken Shinji that you have to face life straightforward and live. However, Shinji cannot comprehend this. He's at the lowest of lows. He can't even walk. Kaoru is gone, and Asuka, now being mature enough to realize Shinji's trauma, takes it upon herself to guide him to a small town.
Are the way to go, I guess.
A happiness without an Ava.
You're right, Kaoru.
I'm now going to show you the end of everything, and the conclusion to the story. This is where I think you'll finally find your meaning. Shinji is still in a state of nothingness. He has now developed PTSD from losing his friends and can't accept reality. He's too afraid to die, but yet cannot bring himself to live. Asuka finally confronts this nihilistic Shinji, venting everything out on him. She force feeds Shinji because he has yet to figure himself out. Or maybe it's her revenge. Maybe Asuka forcing Shinji to live is her revenge, her own hospital scene. We open to a farm, a reality where beautiful nature can thrive, where you can connect with friends and family, leaving you in a state of happiness. Rei begins to find herself once again. Shinji reminds her of her own individual will as both of them finally come to terms to who they really are. Nature is a beautiful thing. It can remind us of who we are, why we're here, and what we want to become. And it's not just the nature, but the people you surround yourself with. These are the ones that you laugh with, cry with, and love. And Shinji finally figures it out. He finally figures out his own reason. This is what finally transformed Shinji. Decades later, we finally get an answer. Teases and other different realities were shown, different scenarios where each character ended, but it finally ends here, right now. This is Shinji's final moment. This is finally the end of Evangelion. Shinji confronts everyone. He confronts Misato and all who don't want him to pilot the Eva. But this time, something different is about Shinji. Something is different about him from the previous movies, from the original show. This is a Shinji that will confront his father and say, "I am here, father. I want to talk with you." Shinji enters the void. It's time to confront everything. Shinji realizes that fighting Gendo was an implausible idea, one that never gained any ground. The animation studios that they fight through represents the failed attempts of each version of Shinji in the show. A failed version of a realization of Shinji, of Anno. Gendo was consumed by his wife Yui. He blocked himself off from others, including his own son. Gendo was afraid of his own son, afraid of hurting him. He used his headphones to block himself off from the rest of the world, until Yui came into his life. Someone who showed him that living was worth the expense. Gendo never wanted to accept his weakness. He was so unsure about raising Shinji, he left. There was no redemption for him. And so realizing this, Gendo Ikari finally comes to terms with himself. Gendo hugs Shinji, crying because Yui lived within Shinji. Gendo has finally ended. He loves his son, and he loves his family. A familiar beach. Shinji sits by Asuka lying down on the sand. Her final confession begins. Asuka wanted to be so strong she didn't need anyone, but in reality, she wanted comfort. Asuka wanted a pat on the head to say, Good job, Asuka. You did it. Both Shinji and Asuka acknowledge their feelings they once had and move on. Asuka accepts herself. This is her end. Kaoru always wanted Shinji's happiness. He wanted to use it for himself and no one else. He never let Shinji express himself fully, and he never let Shinji become the person who he truly wanted to be. But instead of rejecting Kaoru, Shinji accepts him once again, saying, "It's okay, I know how you feel." With Rei, this is where our imagination starts, and also where you started. You are the escapism, but you, Rei, you don't have to be. Rei had always represented a perfect doll, someone who will always do what you tell her to. But that's not how you should live. Reject that notion and live. And so, let's leave this stage, Rei. Truth is subjective. Truth can be changed. But so what? What conclusion you want is up to you. I was just the help along the way. Shinji ends the story by becoming an adult and leaving his once eternal struggle and ventures out into the world of reality. This was his Genesis. This was yours. This was mine. This was Anno's. This was our Neon Genesis Evangelion.
さようなら、すべてのエヴァンゲリオン。